Bill, again, thank you. As His Eminence said, phase one, reminding everyone to please mute. If we're all muted, then please come off of mute. We'll monitor the chat session, so please post your questions or comments in the chat session. We have a good set of questions to begin the Q&A after Bill does his presentation. But we definitely want to add and make sure we get the questions. Even if we don't have time tonight to answer them, we'll still capture them and make sure we get the questions answered and posted. As everyone knows, the materials tonight, as with every of the past 4 sessions, are both on the Metropolis website, as well as Bill's Stewardship Calling website, as well as the recordings of these sessions. And we have Father Corderas tonight, so after the opening prayer and comments by His Eminence, we'll have Father Corderas address us for for 5 minutes and tell us some exciting news as the Archdiocese has released 2021 campaign materials. And as far as the Metropolis, even if Bill is not able to join us, we will go back to our monthly stewardship chair meetings. And we will do that probably right after Thanksgiving, given here we're at the end of the month. And that'll give us a chance as stewardship chairs to come back together to know that we've got the resources and can help one another out as we again enter this very challenging new calendar year, and our stewardship campaigns will be in full swing. So Your Eminence, please give us the blessing.
Let us pray. Almighty God, our help and refuge, fountain of wisdom and tower of strength, who knows that we can do nothing without your guidance and your help, especially in these trying times. Assist us, we pray to you, and direct us to become faithful stewards of your inheritance, the one that you have given us plentiful in our lives. Direct us to the divine wisdom and power so that we may accomplish this and become even more sharers of your riches and your blessings in whatever we may undertake to do faithfully and diligently according to your will, so that it may be profitable to us and to others, and to the glory of your holy name. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, now and always into the ages of ages. Amen. A brief greetings to all of you, my brothers and sisters in the Lord, especially to Father Jim Cordaris, a dear friend and co-worker and colleague for many years. It seems like yesterday that we began this part of our travelogue, this journey, but it has been 10 weeks since we started this 5-part series on stewardship, led by Bill Marianis. And each time we have gathered Bill's wealth of knowledge, his passion, and his commitment to educating people on stewardship has been generously shared so that our parishes can thrive through the offering of our first fruits to God. We know that the challenges are around us, and I think we enumerate some of them earlier, between the pandemic and all the other calamities that we have. And we should not stay there, however. We have opportunities. Think God drives the bus. As long as we are aware of that, we can feel a little bit more at ease with the challenges that we have on a daily basis. Our communities and the way our parishes and our faithful have overcome some financial shortfalls due to the cancellation of events and festivals yet have learned to be better stewards. You know that better than I do. Rounding up, digging deeper, and being creative in identifying new ways to inspire a more engaged generation of givers. This is what you're doing by attending these seminars, these gatherings. You're becoming more informed, more committed, and above all, more faithful. This is where we can take the message of stewardship to heart and put it into action personally and in our parishes. You're here on behalf of yourselves and your parishes. Tonight may be the conclusion of this series on stewardship, but I said earlier, this is only a foretaste of what is going to come down the pike with the assistance of Mr. Marianis and the Archdiocese, hopefully, and at the assistance of the Metropolis. But the Metropolis is committed to provide more opportunities like this. We are here for you. We want to be a resource. We want you to be empowered with the knowledge to create a stewardship ministry at your parish that will be meaningful, far beyond just reaching a financial goal, but truly building up the body of Christ. That is you and me. That is the end result of all these gatherings that we have had the last 10 weeks. As I'm looking forward to your total participation and interaction today, please allow me to express to you my gratefulness and my gratitude for being, most of you, very attentive stewards on behalf of your parishes and yourselves. So with that, those comments, Steve, I turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence. And thank you for joining us again and staying on these sessions. It's truly a testament of how important the stewardship ministries are to you. And I thank you for your support and being a part of these sessions. Father Corderis, exciting release this week. We've been awaiting the 2021 materials. So if you'd like to share some information, I'll put the news release link in the chat for folks to also to look at.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. I wish they would have come out earlier. It was a difficult year for all of us, and we did the best we could. We were letting them out a little bit at a time, and now the website is up. They've been released. Let me just show you what we have, because now that the program is drawing to a close, we turn back to our parishes, and maybe you've already started to get your program started. We do the best we can. I, as a former stewardship chair in my home parish of Minneapolis, I remember how hard it was to figure out what to do next and what was the program and what we needed to do. So we tried the department to put the resources in your hands, either turnkey or customizable. So you can take our work and use it as is, or you can customize it to your parish. So let me just give you an idea of what's there, and then I'll turn it back over to Bill. Let me just go here real quickly. This was the news release that came out. Am I sharing? Is that up on the screen?
Not yet.
No.
Let me go back. Okay.
Kristen, I know we had taken that away.
I put it
Father-
back.
Okay.
How's that? Is
There
that
we
up?
go.
Okay,
Yes.
so this is the news release that came out this week. It's on the Observer page, and Steve put that link up. So this will lead you to the list of resources that we have here. Each one of these links on this page is live, so you can go to the marketplace and order the trifold brochure. Everything else is downloadable as well. You can download the trifold. Also, I would direct you to our Facebook page, which is here. And this is the place where we can update most quickly and get information out to you that's useful. If we see an article that's in the press or something that's working in the parishes, we will share it here almost immediately. So you can go to our Facebook page and see what's happening most currently in outreach and stewardship and evangelism. This is a quick start guide to help you and your team get started right away, to go through some quick steps to get your team organized, to make a plan, and make sure you don't miss one of the bases to touch on and roll out your plan. So just like you pull something out and you need how to get started quickly before you read the manual, this is what you can do in place of reading the entire handbook that we provide you, also in the resources. We had the group of Telos team. If you're familiar with them, it's a group of young professionals who are doing excellent work in ministry. They are driven to support parishes throughout the archdiocese and throughout the country of all jurisdictions. And I've met a couple of them in online from Chicago. And these aren't just kids. The two gentlemen I talked to, one is a Harvard MBA and the other one is a physician who just graduated from medical school. We could never afford to hire these guys, but they're working for free. God bless them. And they came up with a tech finance quick start guide, which is really fits the year that we're dealing with right now. What do we need to do in light of the pandemic and the effect it's having on our outside fundraising efforts and even on our stewardship efforts? So they put together this, which I think is really a helpful piece. I won't go into detail, but you know that it's there. This is the trifold that we put together. This is available on the website, the stewardship website, in both PDF and editable format. Our favorite thing is when parishes take our resources, plug in their own pictures, their own information, and make use of our theme and our writing, but make it personalized for their own. But you can also just download it or order it from the Orthodox Marketplace and use it as it is. So that's our trifold brochure. We took the theme for this year from the Clergy Lady Congress, and we used the theme of love and compassion. And the icon that you see is the compassion of Christ. And it really fits the year that we have, which requires a lot of compassion on our part. So I wanted you to see what that looks like. This is what our pledge card, our commitment card looks like. And this is customizable, of course, because every parish is going to have different items in their ministries to which they want volunteers to offer their services. So this list that you see on the right side, small print, but it's a list that they can check off and tell you that they want to be involved. And then there's just some frequently asked questions, and it ties into the theme of the year. This is our full icon and poster. You can download that and print it on 11 by 17 paper or send it to your printer. So you can have posters around the church. Hopefully we have people coming to church during the pandemic, but that will be there. And we also provide bulletin inserts, which you can also use online with various anecdotes and scripture and just reflections on why we do stewardship. And there are a lot of them here. So you can plug them into your Facebook pages, your online bulletins, and your print bulletins, whatever works for your ministry. We also have a family information card here that helps you to gather information on your parishioners so that you can serve them better and engage them in the life of the church. I'm speaking quickly because I want to get to Bill, so I'm going to wrap this up fairly quickly here. We provide banners, vinyl banners, for outside the church or inside the church, whatever you prefer, to expand on the theme and to promote the theme of the year of stewardship for this year. So this is our website, and I just want you to know it's there, and we have resources going back many, many years, and they are not dated. You don't see the date that they were produced on there, so the ministry materials don't go out of date. And I'm going to wrap it up here. We're here to help you. You can email us at stewardship@goarch.org, stewardship@goarch.org, or call us, and the number is on the website. I won't go into that. Steve, I thank you, and Your Eminence, I thank you, and Bill, thanks for allowing time for this, just to get the word out on these resources. God bless this ministry. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Jim. Thank you. I had the chance to go through the materials quickly yesterday, and it always astounds me, just the richness and the materials and resources. The job of a stewardship committee and a stewardship chair is always difficult. No need to reinvent. There are just fantastic resources and starting points. So I encourage everyone, when you have a few moments, to go take a look and see what fits for your particular parish. And again, just a wonderful set and deep set of resources. So, Mr. Marianis, will you take us into session number 5?
All right, so let's see if we can do this while I'm hopefully sharing my screen and not my shopping list that my wife has given me. I wanted to do a couple things at the outset. First of all, I want to acknowledge again His Eminence's blessings, but also his presence. For those of you that don't have the opportunity to work with as many different parishes as Father Jim and I do, and even Steve, you have no idea how valuable it is to have His Eminence here, so that not only is he telling you it's important, but he's signaling it important by its presence. And Your Eminence, we're grateful to you for your support and everything you do. And I'm also grateful to say that you stole the thunder of this is the beginning. There's more coming, and the conspiracy is afoot. But just so you understand, everything is going to be focused on doing exactly what His Eminence said, what Steve said, what Father Jim said. And I also want to thank Steve and Kristen for putting all of this together. So at some point, if every one of you will take a moment or two to thank His Eminence and thank Steve and thank Kristen Bruskus for putting everything together, none of this would have been possible but for their leadership. I also want to put a plug in for the materials that Father Jim mentioned, in the sense that I concur 1,000% with what he said, that while it's easy and tempting to just take the beautiful work product that they produced and order it, and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, it's much, much more effective if you take their beautiful work product and then make the appropriate customizations. I never want to travel to another parish without seeing that stewardship commitment card there. I'm tired of seeing the ones that y'all are using, which are ineffective. Effort has been placed to putting a stewardship commitment card that really is a commitment of stewardship, not just a how much money can we get out of you kind of thing. The other value of that, if you look at their check off the quick start guide, you'll notice that everything in there is completely reinforced and reinforced. And again, we weren't coordinating everything every step of the way, but when you're focused on doing the right thing the right way, you're going to get reinforcement, because everything that was in that quick start guide is stuff we've talked about, and everything I'm talking about is reinforced in the quick start guide. So even tonight, in answer to one of the questions, we're going to hear a conversation about the 12-month nature of this campaign, not just the one-time one and done kind of element. So these materials are thoughtfully put together, but the majority of them is customizable for you. And the beauty of it is that, the heavy lifting has been done, the organizational work has been done, the graphics have been done. That's the harder part of the work. Now you have to make them your own. So again, I encourage you all to continue to do that, and take advantage of those resources, and frankly, take advantage of each other, because you all will be innovating in real time. And the more you can share with each other the innovations, and that includes the things you tried and didn't work, and maybe they didn't work because you didn't do them right, or maybe they didn't work because they don't work, or maybe they didn't work because if you tweaked it, it would have worked. But share that with each other and learn. So what I'm going to do is a very quick review, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time on Q&A. Now, the Orthodox why guy is always going to ask you why, and it's, why are you here? Why are you here? Not here tonight. We know the answer to that question, but why are you here on this earth, and why is your parish here? And you've got to keep probing yourself to find the answer to that question, and then use that answer to live whatever days, weeks, months, years, or hopefully decades that you have in front of you to do that. And that's equally as important for your parish. You know that I always focus on the prayer and the divine liturgy from 2 Corinthians that reminds us that one day we will stand before the Lord and ask to account. And I ask you to think about your day, every day of your life, as an opportunity to build, if you will, some progress towards a good account. Not that this is a test, not that this is a weighting factor where you just weighted at the end of the day, and if you got more good than bad, it's all good. No, but it really is using this as a vehicle to assess the way that you're going forward. And is what you're doing, is what you're saying, is what you're working on, is it the kind of thing that you would be proud to stand before your Lord and Savior and say, Lord, on this day in October in 2020, here's what I did, here's what I said, here's how I conducted myself. All of the materials, as Steve said, are on your Metropolis website, which of course you all know how to get to. And you should, because there's a plethora of other materials there too, and I encourage you to take advantage of that. And then this is the picture of how you can access it on my website. And as I said, we've created your very own Metropolis of San Francisco stewardship page underneath the stewardship tab. And as Steve pointed out, this presentation has already been loaded, so it's already up there. Even as late as 20 minutes before showtime, one of you sent a question, and we found a way to get it in there and get it loaded. So we try to keep these things current. This is, I think, my 4th or 5th Zoom in a row here, so I'm going to start to lose my voice, which is pleasant for all of you. But so I thought we'd start with a little bit of fun. I had alluded before, and this is also going to be partially the answer to the question, that for about 70 years, the Gallup organization has been um, surveying the country every year with this comprehensive survey that they do, and they measure religiosity. And there's a whole bunch of criteria that they use to measure religiosity. And unlike the red state, blue state maps that you guys are tired of seeing in the political season, in the Gallup religiosity map, the darker the color, the more religious the people in that state are, and the lighter they aren't. So this is where I live. And as you can see, we are very religious. This is where y'all live, and it's awfully white out there. Now, you can choose to look at this a couple of different ways. You could choose, as some people have accused me, particularly when I go up to the Boston area, saying, "Oh, see, this is easy for you guys to reach out and evangelize because people in the South are already, they're already in that mindset. They're already in the Bible Belt." And I say, wait, stop. It's actually the opposite. They already have a religious conviction. That's why they're dark green. You have the mission field of all mission fields. You have a unique opportunity to reach this vast population that by sheer numbers exceeds anything that's anywhere else you can go. And I really believe that. I'm very sincere. I think that the greatest opportunity for growth and expansion of the Orthodox Church in America is going to be from the left coast and the right coast, from the Northeast all the way to the West Coast. That's where we're going to see, that's where we have the greatest opportunity. And proof of that is look what the Mormons have done with the state of Nevada. It's the reason why it's dark green. It's not dark green because of, Utah. It's not dark green because of, this, that, or the other thing. It's dark green because they've actually made that their mission field. And so the reason why I share this with you is to poke a little fun at you at the beginning, but also to really challenge you to start to think about the mission field that you have in front of you. I also wanted to kind of set the tone for what we're talking about because I know everyone is really properly focused to some extent on the pandemic, and some people are over it and some people are still fretting it. But I think, I do want to warn you in advance that some care and precautions are going to be necessary. As you've been used to going to church in your pajamas and your fuzzy slippers and stuff like that, when we do reopen the churches, you don't want to be the Mrs. Poulos and show up with your cup of coffee and your fuzzy slippers out there. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. The second part of this, and I also love this cartoon. This is the COVID compliant charismatics, and you see they're in their own little bubbles over there, and they're singing and they're testifying. But I wanted to kind of start the challenging of tonight with a reminder of a piece of data that we actually talked about in the program earlier. And this comes from the Pew Research Center's research. Now, this was as of March of 2020. And when they researched the Christian population in America in March, 92% of those who attended church at least once or twice a month said that when they could attend church again, they would attend it at least as frequently as they did before. Okay. So as of the beginning of the COVID pandemic and the impact in America, there was this high degree of optimism that, now this doesn't mean that people are going to go to church every Sunday if they didn't go to church every Sunday before. But what it did mean is at the beginning, people said, yeah, I know we're going virtual now, but I'm going to return back when the time comes to the same level I did before. I guess the question is, do you really believe that that will be the experience at your parish? Now, this survey was done in March. It is now a lot later. It's a lot longer. A lot of different things have happened. A lot of different challenges have occurred. And whereas I was as optimistic when I presented that data with you at the beginning that we would see, if not 92%, we'd see a high retention rate. As I've started to continue to work diligently every day with parishes all over the country, I'm starting to sense a greater degree of concern in my heart as to the level of return that we're going to see to our parishes. And this is not as an effort to criticize the clergy or the laity. It is to say that we will have to rethink and go back to what I used in that kind of that Gallup survey. We've got to remember that we are going to have to some extent to re-evangelize our very own parishioners. We're going to have to reaccustom and reacclimate them into what it means to be engaged in a weekly worship experience and engaging in the body and blood of Christ and understanding the at least weekly and hopefully more frequently service attendance and things of that nature. So I don't want to paint a rosy picture, even though I try to be optimistic in everything I do. I think we're going to have some challenges in front of us. And I think this is the point that I really wanted to kind of end this first segment, is that the building might be closed, but the church is very much open. And that church represents you. And whether you're praying at home or you're praying online or you're praying in the bar, or you're praying in traffic, or you're praying in a hospital, or wherever you're praying, you are part of the Orthodox Church's continuous unbroken tradition dating back to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so while we would naturally want to gather again in the building, that's of course the way we are acclimated, and that's the way we are as a human race. I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that the buildings are the buildings and they're important for our worship experience, but every day you are the church, and every day you represent the church, and every day you are the church of Jesus Christ, and every day you have a mission as the church of Jesus Christ. Now, you know that the question that I always challenge myself with is the question that I'm afraid that the Lord is going to ask me, and that is, what did you do with my church under your watch, given all of the gifts that I gave you? And I do reflect on that literally at the beginning of every day and at the end of every evening. But I thought today, in addition to that, I really want to get in your face before we start answering your questions very dramatically. So I wanted to share with you some really tough love from St. Paisios, the Athonite. And listen, if I had said this at the beginning of a program and it was attributed to me, His Eminence would disinvite me probably from ever showing up again in the metropolis of Atlanta. But this is a saint of our Orthodox Church. Now, he's speaking in a time a long time ago, but I want you to listen to his words, and I want you to pretend, because you don't have to pretend too hard. He's talking to us today. Here's what St. Paisios said. He said, "The spirit of lukewarmness reigns. We've been spoiled for good. How does God tolerate us?" Now listen, you think that's tough? Wait till you see the next thing he said. He said, "Today's generation is the generation of indifference. There are no warriors. The majority are fit for parades and feasts only. Even people who've got something inside have begun to grow cool, saying, 'Can I really do anything to change the situation?'" And here's where he concluded. He said, "We have to witness our faith with boldness, because if we continue to remain silent, we'll have to answer in the end. So in these difficult days, each must do what is in their power, leave what's out of their power to God. In this way, our conscience will be clear." And I think St. Paisios could have been writing to us in 2020 and could not have been more accurate in what he said. In so many ways, what he described at a period of time much earlier than this is relevant to us today. And so whether we accept the challenge and whether we recognize that perhaps we haven't been as good a warriors as we could be, what we have to acknowledge is that every one of us can do something, and it is that which we must do. And so this is the focus of everything we're trying to get. And this is the reason why we always begin by asking you, why are you here? Why are you here on this earth? What can you do in Christ's church, in God's kingdom, in the metropolis of San Francisco, in your parish? Now, one of the things that was the hallmark at the very beginning, and what has been so reaffirming to me, is as I've talked to many of the parishes in the metropolis when I do the financial stewardship analysis or get your emails, you got it. And His Eminence has reinforced it. So thankfully, that's the case. The key thing, the key message, the title of this program is basically culture. It's creating a culture of stewardship. And everybody's heard the old story that, culture eats strategy, and everybody's got a different meal that it eats it. And I'm telling you, it eats culture, eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so if you don't have the right culture in your parish, it doesn't matter what strategies you try to implement. You may be successful, but you will never be sustainably successful to the degree you're capable of. You may have the right strategy in your own life or in your family's life, but until you've created the right culture in your family and the right culture that you're living by, then you're never going to be successful. So if you want to change any of the results that you're seeing, we have to be engaged in a conscious effort to change our culture. It doesn't mean the culture of ethnic origin. That's not what I'm referring to, but it's the culture that has existed in our parish. And it doesn't mean that our parish's culture is necessarily bad. What it does mean is it needs to improve. There are things that we can do to improve it, and this is part of that continuous improvement. And the thing we talked about at the beginning, and the thing we're going to end up here with, is the big idea is engagement. It really, 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 really is all about engagement. That's the big E. Engagement liturgically, engagement sacramentally, engagement sacrificially, engagement in ministries, engagement in attendance at services, engagement in supporting and working with each other. There is no end to which engagement isn't the answer. And that's really the point that has been thematically brought throughout this. So tying these thoughts together, what we've said is, you have been called. You have been given a calling by your Creator, number one. Number two, you're going to answer one day to your Creator for what you did with all the gifts, talents, abilities that you did. And the way you're going to answer with regard to your parishes, your communities, and even your own practice of stewardship is the culture you've created and how engaging you've become. Now, the journey we started was really going to go through these 15 elements of it. And this is the journey that you've been, and you've been very patient throughout all of it. And we broke it down into quadrants of 4. But what I'm going to quickly do is just give you one quick snapshot slide. These are all slides you've seen before that picks up each one of these themes. And hopefully by doing it this, what you'll see is that while it seemed like we were talking about individual topics, this is all part of a collective mosaic of whole. The book that I always recommended, and I continue to recommend, by the way, it's going to be the answer to one of the questions that was already posed, is Al Winsman's book called Growing an Engaged Church. Al is the director of the practice group leader of the Gallup organization. Folks, I don't sell anything. I don't get any commissions. So I'm not selling Gallup products or organizations, but I'm telling you, they've been at this longer than most people have. So whether it's them or Barna or Pew or Public Religion Research Institutes, they're legitimate agencies out there. This book really does a phenomenal job of summarizing over 70 years of data in Christian churches. And what they've concluded and what we started this program with is churches with engaged members are spiritually healthier and better able to carry out their missions, attract people, fund ventures, and have a higher percentage of spiritually committed individuals. And these are direct quotes right out of the book, that spiritual commitment is really the result of one big factor, and that's congregational engagement. How engaged are the people in your parish? And so if we can focus on engaging them and increasing their commitment, will follow. And basically their data shows that how much people give financially or of their time or volunteering, everything is perfectly correlated with their engagement. And finally, that the key characteristic of engaged members is that the church is top of mind for them. It's not a one and done, 1.5 hour Sunday experience, and then I'm done. So part of when we talk about changing the culture is saying, how can we make the churches more the center of our lives in a very, very, very busy life that we lead? Now, you'll remember that the life-changing idea that I shared with you, I call INEIG, which is nothing more than a translation of the bad acronym, it's not yours, it's God's. Everything you have is a gift from God. Everything your parish has is a gift given by somebody of another previous generation or somebody else. The question you can be focusing on, what am I giving to the legacy of the other generations that will follow? We talked about the second element of aligning the leadership, PPS. Make sure your priest, your parish board, your stewardship and ministry leaders all agree on the stewardship strategy. Buy in, become a part of it, and own it. Lead the process and ensure the buy-in of the parish assembly. And this is the reason why we spend so much time trying to make sure that the priests are trained, that the laity, that the parish councils are trained, that the stewardship ministry leaders are trained. So that second principle after we talked about engagement was alignment. The third one we talked about was really tithing is the right answer. I will tell you, and I say this over and over again, that if you will begin the journey of taking your parish to being a percentage giving parish on your way to becoming a tithing parish, you will recognize what every other parish and every other church has done this, has recognized, and that is you do not have a financial problem. There's plenty of capacity out there. So if tithing is our ultimate objective, and interestingly, one of the questions is going to allude to this, this is the reason why we spend so much time on it. And the way to do that is to become a percentage giving parish on your way to being a tithing parish. Start by using the roundup. Invite, encourage, cajole, beg, and in fact, demand that every parishioner round up their level of contribution from last year to this year to the next highest whole number. So if they were giving 0.8% of their income, tell them to go to 1%. If they're at 1.4, tell them to go to 2. If they were 2.6, tell them to go to 3. And then just see how it goes. And then if they survive that year, add another percent the next year until they become tithers. We talked at length about that. The fourth principle we talked about was the principle of if you will get people to engage in their time, their wallets will follow. When you grab their wristwatch and you grab them by the arm into a ministry, trust me, their wallets or purses are right behind them. So the data all shows, the research all shows, and it cannot be clearer than this, that people who give of their time and are engaged give substantially more than people who are just asked for money. So stop focusing on asking for money and start to get people engaged liturgically, sacramentally, and in the ministries of the church. We then talked about the next element, the fifth element, if you will, of how it's all personal. And I gave you my great story about how His Eminence stole my banana gun and that I was using to do my little mafia scene about how it's not business, it's just personal, and how it really is personal. But what we gave you was a plan A and plan B. Now, for today only and just for you all. So this is a secret. Don't share this with anybody else, okay? You had to be present to get this secret today. I've added not a plan C, but a plan COVID, right? Because I know that's one of the questions people have. We know that the most effective way to engage people in stewardship is to visit them one-on-one at home. That's plan A. We know that the second most effective way to do it is to get a small group to come to your house in a gathering. We went over all of those details and we can cover them again. But the question I keep getting put back to me is, well, what do we do now during COVID period of time, particularly in states like yours where it's illegal to go out and breathe fresh air. So as opposed to us in Georgia, we've been open since, before March. Anyway, but all kidding aside, what we have to now migrate to, because you really cannot let this stewardship season go by, as Father Jim mentioned, we were all hoping we'd be past this cycle of being shut down and we can open back up again and engage. Well, that isn't the reality. We are going to be through this stewardship solicitation cycle in various stages of contraction. So during the COVID period, we want to challenge you to call every parishioner on the phone. That's plan C for COVID, okay? Now, after we're past COVID, I won't allow you to use plan C. You have to go to plan A or plan B, right? You're either going to meet people in their homes or you're going to have them come to your home. But during the COVID period, here's what I want to challenge you to do. Take the materials, whether it's your own materials, the materials from the Archdiocese that are customized, the other materials I've suggested or pointed you towards. I don't really care. Take good quality materials and then allocate every parishioner in your community to an ambassador. That's what I call them, but you can call them whatever you want to, and have them personally call everybody. First and foremost, to say, how you doing? How's it going? Just let them talk. Record their stories, listen to them. You may find out that they actually need some help in a way that they've been unable to or unwilling to share with anybody. So make it the personal, engaging opportunity that we always hope these things to be. And then merely let them know that the church continues to serve and fulfill its mission even in these crazy times, and that they are the church and that we need their help to continue to do that. And then you go from there. Okay, so I've taken the personal piece and I've given you one flexibility during the COVID period. We walked through in some length in segment 2 the 9-step process on how you would do these solicitations if you were going to do the personal solicitation. That's steps 5 through 9, the interpersonal steps. But it's those first 4 foundational steps that we spent a bunch of time talking about. And by the way, this is the kind of thing you can do, and you can do this even in the COVID period. So this is a quick review, but all of this was covered in the material. So you can go back and listen to the tapes and rewind, if you will, to pick up on that, or you can ask a question. We talked about next how we engage people, and that one of the vehicles in which to engage them, again, not speaking liturgically and not speaking sacramentally. We know how to do that. But in the ministry aspect, we talked about creating a council of ministries where the co-leaders of each of the ministries, together with the clergy and the parish board, form a council that work together to achieve the vision of the parish. And so this is broadening the leadership team and really getting people to focus on how we work together to achieve a broader vision for the parish. And it's also reminding every one of our faithful that we want them to attach at one point on this circle for whatever ministry is relevant to them. So whichever ministry along this circle, every one of the dots that form the circle is a different ministry. We want them to attach by serving in that ministry. And so we talked a lot about how we could create that. Then we start to look at the welcoming piece. And I'm picking one slide from the materials you should have already seen on each of these 15 elements in quick review. And we've focused on that being welcomed is the second most important thing that people look for in picking a church. Second most important thing. And it's almost first, right behind quality of sermons. And we talked a little bit about how just welcoming in the narthex is not sufficient. It's not enough. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. But it can't be overstressed, the importance of a full welcoming ministry. Then we started talking about the outreach piece of it, and we talked about how do we evangelize. And there's a lot of data that we presented to you, but the one that I wanted to keep challenging you with is the hard, reliable data from Lifeway Research that shows that 71% of Protestants and non-denominational churchgoers have invited somebody to attend church with them in the last 6 months. And 25% have done it have done at least 3 such invitations in the last 6 months. And yet we do not do that. And this is part of the culture that we need to change. That's the reason why I started with that Gallup map to show the incredible mission field that is available to you in your incredible metropolis. If we can start to take some of those people that are in that form that white area that say they don't have a religious affiliation, maybe they were raised something and they don't have it anymore, who knows why, and we can find them and engage them in dialogue and engage them and direct them in, we can start to invite them. And we actually have a testimonial. This is actually a real life experience of who would have thought this would have been possible. But one of the clergy here on this phone, I won't mention him by name so as to not embarrass him, but he knows this story, and Kristen knows this story. But I had a first cousin, lived in California, never really raised in the church, never really raised his kids in the church. One of his kids got married to a young lady who half of her side of the family was Orthodox, but she was never really raised in the church. And we connected up on a Mariana's family genealogy project because she finally started getting interested in the side that she married into. And so we started connecting. And as I connected with her, and just a brilliant young lady, a former palliative care nurse, and basically kind of just without probing too hard, just kind of asked her where were they and what was going on with their family. She basically opened the door a little bit to say, I really wasn't raised in religion. My husband, your cousin's son really wasn't. But we were both kind of have this Orthodox thing in the background. And I've been kind of wondering about that. And I listened to a couple of your podcasts and I watched a couple of your videos, and I'm just kind of wondering. And so my first question is, tell me exactly where you live. And I figured out which Orthodox church was nearby because she's in your metropolis, Your Eminence, and Kristen helped me figure out which parish. And I reached out to the clergy, and immediately he responded, and I responded to her, and she responded to me back tonight, said I'm going to reach out to him. And I feel like I need to get to the church, and they need to raise, there's 2 small children. Now, long personal story. I'm not here to tell you personal stories. What I'm here to tell you is that there are a lot of people out there just like my cousin's daughter-in-law who maybe were something else, maybe Orthodox, maybe never even heard the word Orthodox in your area. And we have to find a way, we have to change the culture of our parishes to invite them. We shifted over to talk about thanking and the critical importance of thanking and having a focus on thanking ministry. And the slide that I chose is Ken Makovsky's line is that you either have a thank you culture or you don't have a very good one. And so the way I want you to think about this going forward is anytime anybody, parishioner or otherwise, reaches out to you to talk to you about something going on in the church, find a reason to thank them for something. Start by thanking them for something. Even if it's small, it doesn't matter. Just start by thanking them and you'll immediately change the culture. We spent a lot of time talking about the importance of youth stewardship and how critically important it is to have a separate stewardship program for your youth, and how we also talked about critically important it was to have youth on your stewardship committee. So, foreshadowing one of the questions that's going to come, one of the people that you're going to add to your stewardship committee is a representative of your youth, and they together are going to help you design a stewardship program for your youth to get them in the habit of understanding the importance of serving the church and being generous to the church. And the science of generosity studies that we spent so much time on at the beginning prove unequivocally that we have the opportunity to teach stewardship to our youth, and that will take it with them to the rest of their lives. It is cradle to grave. We talked about small groups as the vehicle to reconnect people. And the quote that I give you over and over again is that the bigger a church gets, the smaller it must become. So as if you only are in a parish that only has 100 families, you're already fairly intimate and interpersonally related. But as your church starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, you need tools to create smaller pods that are all connected as one big community. And a small group ministry is the vehicle to do that. That's the reason why we spent those materials. When we start to talk about how we communicate, the message there is that people give to causes, not to crying. Now that's really important right now, because your temptation is going to be to write your stewardship material saying, oh my God, COVID and the churches have been closed and we haven't been able to nickel and dime you by selling you candles and epitaphion flowers and getting that $1 that we get every time the tray gets passed. And, but that's crying. That's uninspiring. Nobody wants to give to a crier. But if you can show people that you're actually making a difference, then that is what will inspire people. And in Gerald Panis's book, Mega Gifts, the synthesis that I did of that, these are not his words, these are mine from his book, but they fully derive from it, is that people give to causes and people with integrity. So as long as you can validate the integrity, particularly now when they don't see you and they're interacting with you more tangentially, peripherally at least, you want to talk about the cause and the people. Look at what we're doing to make a difference in the kingdom. Look at how we're serving people. Look at how we're responding to needs. Look at what generosity looks like. We talked about the ways to stop the nickel and diming, and it comes back to having the right culture and leading by example through the parish leadership and those of you in the stewardship ministry of becoming a percentage giving church on your road to becoming tithing. And then making a commitment, having the leadership commit themselves to become percentage givers on their way to becoming tithers. And then eventually stop the nickel and diming by announcing that a year from now, we're not going to do any more nickel and diming. So we need you to conclude that or include that in your pledge. And then constantly refining your communications so that we're creating an educative environment and creating educations, but it's not just the clergy's responsibility. The laity bear that responsibility also. And in some regards, you won't necessarily say anything different, hopefully, than your priest would say, but the fact that it's coming from you as a layperson has a different level of credibility. I can come into a community and do a homily that's the exact same homily that the priest would give, but because it's coming from what the laity perceive as one of them, it has a different place in people's minds. And so thinking about our communications using the techniques we talked about of positivity, about creating vision, about avoiding the mistakes that lead to donor fatigue, but also sharing the responsibility amongst clergy and laity. And then finally, celebrating everything we can possibly celebrate by giving thanks, by reminding people of the difference we're making in people's lives and how we're bringing people closer to Christ. And the example I use of a parish that really was suffering and stuff like that, and they said we need to do something, and so they started a shoe collection ministry, and they literally just said bring your extra shoes and drop them off in the boxes outside the church as you drive by, because it's still COVID period. And they collected tons of shoes, and they took it to a local homeless ministry, and they shared those shoes with those individuals. And when they shared the results, and when the people from that homeless ministry reported back, that community blossomed, and they said, what can we do next? What can we do next? What can we do next? Then we shifted and talked about planned giving. And just to kind of entice you, I gave you hard, reliable, bona fide, unequivocally true numbers that my generation of baby boomers is going to transition somewhere between 30 trillion and $68 trillion over the next 25 years. And the number one reason why people say that they included a charity in their will was because they were asked. And so we could not encourage you strongly enough to create a planned giving ministry using the materials of the Archdiocese, or as you may choose to supplement. We talked about the critical importance of transparency and accountability, and the data shows, reliable research shows, that people would give more and would increase what they give as long as they have confidence in the transparency and the accountability of the organization. Finally, we talked about the team. This is the 10 elements of a well-structured, fully comprehensive stewardship team. These are all of the 10 functions. A leader, someone in charge of communications, someone in charge of welcoming, thanking, small groups, somebody who runs the actual campaign, someone who does planned giving, the youth member, the ambassador training leader, and the data analysis person. Now, one person can serve multiple of these tasks, but you can't do more than two. So we're going to foreshadow one of the questions, which leads us quickly to the Q&A period. Now, what we did was, thank you to those of you that submitted your questions in advance. And Steve and Kristen gathered them together and they would feed them to me. And so as they came in, if they came in enough time, I could create a slide or two that would actually answer the question. And then there was a group that came in just literally half an hour before the program. So we'll give you the answers, but we may not have a slide form now, but we'll add it later. And as you have additional ones, Steve's monitoring the chat room. So let's dig into them. So the first two are companion questions, and I'll just focus you on the red. And it's talking, by the way, there's a testimonial there of somebody who listened to this program who's already committed to becoming a roundup, to do the roundup in their own lives. And I'm hoping and praying that every one of you will embrace the roundup as something you do in your life. But the question that they were asking is, okay, so we want to get out of nickel and diming, and that makes perfect sense. But then what do we do with the Ahepa and the daughters and the Philoptikos? And then they could have said, and others that are soliciting. And so this is what we refer to in my way as a third rail issue. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with third rail issues, so I drew this picture up here so you can get it. If this is a picture from a subway, and you see number 1 and number 2 are the train tracks on which the subway train rests, right? The subway train goes on it. But off to the side, there is a third rail. And as you can see, it's completely electrified. That's why it's covered. And when somebody tells you it's a third rail issue, what it means is when you touch it, you're going to get electrocuted, you will die. So I'm getting ready to touch what is a third rail issue, which means I will be killed after this. That's the reason why I apologized and told my dear friend Jeannie Ranglis how much I love her and whatnot, and the rest of you and stuff like that. But I'm going to touch the third rail issue. So let's just get the difficult one behind us so we can say it. Now, I'm going to start with a couple of caveats, just so we're clear with each other. I've spent over 30 years as an active member in the Ahepa organization, including about 25 years in which I was incredibly active at every level of national leadership, et cetera, et cetera. I could tell you stories that would make your hair curl. So I get that. I understand that. I'm on the board of directors of the National Hellenic Society, and all of us have different things that we're engaged in. So I have a bias. I get that, and I'm going to confess that bias. Secondly, the work that is done by the Ladies Philoptikos Society is absolutely incredible. It's second to none. The level of generosity and love that they share, the level of service that they offer is exemplary, and it should be a guiding light for all of us. Now, you know there's a but coming, right?
Right.
But here's the problem. Because of both, and I'm just going to pick on those two organizations that I love very dearly, Philoptikos and the Ahepa family. But you could, by the way, fill in the blank with any number of the other organizations or the Topika Somatia that exist in your parishes that are also doing fundraising and collections and things of that nature. Here's the problems, and they're two related but different problems. Problem number 1, they facilitate and foster that nickel and diming mentality that makes it very hard in church stewardship work. Because if every time they see you coming up to them in the church hall afterwards for coffee, they expect that you're either going to be hustling them for a contribution to some good and worthy cause, whether it's an Ahepa family scholarship or a fire relief or any of the wonderful, wonderful, funny work that's being done. The nickel and diming that takes place in our churches has a impact on our stewardship. And it's just one of those things that we just have to recognize is true. Here's the second challenge, then I'll wrap it into one and then see if we can go forward. The second challenge that we have is, and now I'm going to speak to the men. Ladies, you can just laugh right now, okay? Men, here's the bad news. The bad news is you don't have to do anything philanthropic in your life. You have been exempted in orthodoxy from being anywhere near philanthropy because you've outsourced that to the Ladies Philoptikos Society. And there's the problem. The problem is because they are so good and because they do so much good, that has exempted all of you lazy men from feeling like you have an obligation of philanthropy. And that's the thing we've got to work our way through. We are a church in transition. We may be in transition for the rest of most of our adult lives, but we've got to get out of the nickel and diming that we're all doing against the same body of people. And we got to get out of the mentality that says, whether you're a priest, whether you're a male, whether you're a parish council, whether you're a ministry there, oh, that's philanthropic work. That's charity work. I don't have to do that. That's Philoptikos' job. No, it's not. And we've got to get ourselves wrapped back into a mindset that says Christ, at the end of the parable of the Good Samaritan, I want you to go back and read Luke 10, 37, chapter 10, verse 37, right? At the end of the parable of the Good Samaritan, after he tells this outrageous story, and it really is outrageous. I mean, these Jewish people were listening to the story about a Samaritan. Now, remember, back then, the Samaritans and the Jews hated each other. They couldn't see each other. They couldn't be in the same room. They couldn't even touch each other. I mean, it was an anathema for them to be anywhere near each other. That's how much the hatred and the vitriol existed. I mean, it's worse than the Democrats and Republicans right now, okay? I'm just telling you, these folks were the Hatfields and McCoys. They couldn't stand to be in the same room. And as Christ is telling the story of this Jewish guy who got beat up and left on the side of the road, he says, and then the Samaritan came along, and you could, I mean, I'm making this up, obviously, but I can imagine the gasp of all the Jews to whom he was telling the story going, they knew somebody had to be a good guy in the story because there was always a good guy in Christ's stories. And he says, and then a Samaritan came along, and you could hear him say, oh no, please don't let the Samaritan be the good guy. We hate the Samaritans. And of course, the Samaritan was a good guy, right? Okay. So we know how the story ends. The Samaritan does this great act. And Christ says something at the end. He said, and now I'm speaking to the women only. Go and do likewise and serve and help others. Men, you don't have to worry about that. If you go, I kept looking, it's not there in Luke 10:37. The admonition is for all of us to go and do likewise in serving others. So we got to figure out how to do this. We got to get past this third rail issue. We got to figure out how we make this part of an overall ministry, because I'll be honest with you, here's the challenge that I get when we do financial stewardship analysis, because I measure what percentage of your budget went for parish chosen charities and ministries, and they're ridiculously low percentages. It's anywhere from 1% to 4% of the typical church parish is actually going to parish chosen charities and ministries. That's appallingly low. That's embarrassingly low. We should be embarrassed of ourselves. And then somebody, if they're really astute, will ask the question, well, what about all the money that Philoptikos gives away? And I'm going, great question. Problem is, it's not showing up on your P&L on your financial statement, right? Because we've created this mentality of us and them, and somehow we get past this. Now, I don't have that solution for you. What I am telling you, though, is that this is something that we need to work on together. This is not a criticism of the good work that's being done, the extraordinary good work that's being done by Philoptikos, and the good work that's being done by any number of other organizations. God bless them from taking up that arms. But we have to make the conscious decision that we have that responsibility that Christ gave to us, not only in the parable of the Good Samaritan, but over and over and again throughout Holy Gospel. We have to be the co-workers that make this mission field real. So I'm going to move on before I get shot at, just to get to the third question. But I'm sure.
Can we shoot at you right now?
Please, Jeannie. I can't resist. Go ahead.
You know, I can't help myself.
Yes.
Philoptikos really doesn't stand alone. It stands with the church as one body for sure. But Philoptikos does extraordinary works that involves the church, but really reaches out to the core to help those in need. And just like with these fire victims, we're going to be in the forefront right now, tomorrow morning, helping these families. But more than anything, we reach out. We're the only Metropolis that reaches out to our seminarians and students, knows them, and sees the future priests develop right in front of our faces.
Amen.
So Philoptikos is different than any other organization, and I don't even call Philoptikos an organization. I call it a movement of men and women working together. So thank you for reinforcing us, but I don't really want to be on that third rail.
No, you're not on the third rail. I'm on the third rail because I'm picking a fight with all of the men who have decided that we don't have the responsibility to do anything philanthropic, anything charitable, because y'all got it covered. And I'm just telling you, now y'all have to figure out how to invite us in. That's another conversation. But what I am telling you is we have outsourced this in a way that is not healthy. and that doesn't mean that the work that's being done, the extraordinary work that's being done, isn't healthy. It's phenomenal. Without it, so many people would be in greater need. So this is a to-do list item for us to figure out and work together on. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to segue on, Jeannie. Thank you very
Okay,
much for not
go
killing me
ahead.
too
You can
badly.
You can mute me now.
Yeah, no. I would never do that. That would be irrelevant. I mean, we would be ineffective anyway, because you know how to get past it. The third question that we got
Thank you, Bill.
was thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. The third question we got was really, and I just highlighted and read the critical part, is like, how do we bring the rest of the stewardship committee on board who were not able to participate in these programs? And so I'm giving you 4 answers to this. So the first answer, Steve already alluded to. Kristen has been great enough to be recording every one of these sessions. They are available and visible to you on your website, on my website. So one thing you can do is require your stewardship committee to go through one at a time, not all 4 or 5 at a time, right? Do it, spread it out over however long you want to. They can do it on their own, however you want to do that. But the point is, we've recorded this so that it is a permanently available to you. So that's one thing that's available to you. And I provided you the links on my website. Obviously, you know how to get to it from the Metropolis website. Second thing, on my website, and I've again provided the link, I actually recorded a live version of the Igniting the Flame program. Now, this was about 2.5 years ago, so some of the data is about 2.5 years old. There's the latest 2.5 years data hasn't been included, but the principles are the same. The methodology is still the same. Again, those are videos available on the website that you can look at for free forever. So what some parishes have done have said, we're going to take the 4 hours of video and we're going to spread it out over 4 one-hour segments, and that's it. And then we're going to watch a video, and then we're going to talk amongst ourselves, and then we're going to come back in a couple of weeks to do it. That's another thing. Thirdly, Father Jim has provided you the link. Steve has put it in the chat room. I provided it to you here of the materials from the Archdiocese. There are also materials on my website that are also available to you from articles that you can include in there, sample ministry handbooks, ways that you can communicate. I mean, so, and also the whole podcast series that we have that you can download and listen to, podcasts on Ancient Faith Radio and all of these things. So the point here is, with regard to you all who asked about your stewardship committee, we've provided these to you on video. We've provided additional videos to you. We provided you materials from the Archdiocese website, my website, and a podcast series. And at the end of the day, if you have any questions, you can always hit me an email at bill@stewardshipcalling.com, bill@stewardshipcalling.com, and we've gotten some questions that way. That was the third question. By the way, if I'm not answering, if whoever asked it didn't get a complete answer, then, pop it into the chat room and Steve will capture it and we'll revise it. I'm just trying to go through these so that we can also make time for the spontaneous ones that come up. So the next question that we got was that, while the stewardship program is foundational and year long, there's several moments in a year when parishes need to do, and then here's the question, special fundraising for a particular need. What's the best way to integrate this or keep them separate from the stewardship annual program? I'm going to make 3 points. The first point, capital campaigns are different from stewardship campaigns. We had a whole module talking about the differences between capital campaigns from stewardship campaigns. But a well-run capital campaign should be run simultaneous with, and not in lieu of, and most importantly, not in competition with, your stewardship campaign. They are complementary. But here's the point. If we've created a culture of stewardship within our parish, then when we make the sacrificial ask for a limited period of time, 2, 3, or 4 years, in a capital campaign, that's over and above what their level of stewardship is. And what I will tell you is the data has shown that in churches that have built a culture of stewardship, when they ask for and do a well-run capital campaign, their stewardship actually goes up, not down. They are not competitive with each other when they're both done properly. So with regard to your question, if the reason why you're having this other drive is because you're in a capital campaign, I would tell you, step back, plan it, do it right. They should be run simultaneously. Okay. Part B, every once in a while, like fires, hurricanes, earthquakes, ice storms, pandemics, there are emergency appeals that crop up. And when there is an emergency appeal, whether it was because of the tornadoes that hit Ionian Village, or the fires that your parishes are experiencing, or the earthquakes, or whatever the emergency appeal is. That's a one-time, one-hit only. We're appealing to the generosity of individuals to help these people in need. That isn't going to happen every Sunday. It isn't going to happen every month. It probably will only happen once or twice during the course of the year. Those are understandable. Those are special emergency drives, and they're clearly articulated as that, okay? So I've created two categories of permissible one-offs: the capital campaign and the emergency drive. If you find the need to have a separate fundraiser other than your annual stewardship program, then my harsh message in Part C applies. You are poor planners. You should not have left yourself in that situation. There should never, other than in a case of emergency, other than the case of a capital campaign, if you're doing effective planning, you should never need to have a special fundraiser. Now, one of the ways you do effective planning, again, you go back to something we talked about earlier, what I refer to as the 10-10-80 rule that you should apply in your life, you should teach your children to apply in their life, and your parish should practice in its life. The first 10% that you get goes to God's kingdom. The second 10% you get at your tithe. The second 10% goes to your savings account, your retirement account, your rainy day fund, whatever you want to call it, the furnace replacement fund. And then you learn to live off of the 80%. If your parish has applied the 10-10-80 rule itself, meaning that of all of the generosity it's received, no less than 10% of that is given away. In other words, it's not just recycled to using for the parishioners. We're truly helping the kingdom. And then 10% is our reserve, our contingency, our emergency, and we're living off the 80. Then we never have a need for a special fund drive, unless, again, there is this occasional emergency that arises. So if you're finding that you're needing emergency fund drives, don't say that too loudly, because it shows that you're poor managers, or you don't have a good culture of stewardship in your program, that you've built in the right levels of reserves, or probably both. And so that's a harsh answer, but I really wanted to get you out of the notion that this recurring campaign, because that's how nickel and diming drives stewardship levels down, and the data shows this empirically. Okay, so sorry for the harshness of the answer, but that's the right answer. Then somebody asked the question about a stewardship committee, looking for the size, the scope, the education. So I gave you a part A, B, and C answer. I'm reviewing for you that there are 10 functions that have to be performed in a well-run stewardship program, okay? Now, some of these you may say, we already have a ministry doing this, and that's okay. So for example, some parishes have a separate welcoming ministry. Some people may have a separate small groups ministry. That's great, that's wonderful. But have the leaders of those ministry on your stewardship team, because the thanking and the small groups are an integral part of creating this full cycle of 15 projects or activities that work in concert with each other. Now, as I said, one person can handle 2 of these functions, but no one person can really handle 3 or more. So at a minimum, we're starting with 5 people on the stewardship team, splitting up these 10 responsibilities. Part B. Remember, I told you, if you remember back to the program on how we do the personal solicitation, what I said is we really want to have any one person talking to no more than 9 other families within the parish community. They take care of themselves, and they take care of 9 of their family and friends, unless they're Jeannie Ranglish or Christian Bruscus or Steve Pappas or Bill Marianis, or those of us that are crazy, that are totally comfortable going up to total strangers and engaging them and talking to them about participating. But for the vast majority of your stewardship committee, all they have to do is talk to 9 of their family and friends and themselves. So that suggests that your stewardship committee will expand to about 10% of the total number of stewardship units, which means if you have 300 units in your church, you need to be having a stewardship committee of 30 people. Now, that should include, during the campaign phase, the parish council, the stewardship committee, the ministry heads. I mean, we can recruit from this whole bunch of people because they're all talking to other parishioners to get them engaged in the church. So I'm giving you 2 different answers. There's at least 5 people that you need, no matter how big or small your parish is. And then the best answer is about 10% of the total number of stewardship units is an estimated size of a good stewardship committee, but it can grow and shrink, right? So during the campaign, it's got to be 10%. At other parts of the year, it may contract again a little bit to where they're just working on one or more of these functions. The second part of the question was really a phenomenal one, and that is about continuing education. So that it's a two-part answer. Part number one, everybody in each of these 10 areas of responsibility should be doing research every year, constantly. That's what I do. That's what we're trying to get done, through the Archdiocese, et cetera. As new research, as new information comes out, we're absorbing that and figuring out, now, how do we tweak it? How do we revise it? How do we change it? So on the learning part, every one of these people who are leading any one of these initiatives ought to be reading and studying and looking at surveys or reaching out to other people and learning. And then I recommend that you go through at least one annual training cycle of the entire stewardship team. And remember, if you're going to do either the Plan A or the Plan B personal solicitations, we built in as one of the steps training your stewardship committee on exactly what we want them to do, down to giving them a script. And I actually provided you a sample script that you could use, a topical script of the things that you want to cover in those sessions. And we can go in more detail on that. And sometimes I get asked to actually help do a training program or teach a community how to build a training program for their parish. So constant research, constant sharing. That's why what Steve talked about is at least a monthly meeting of all the stewardship chairs sharing ideas is really great. Well, each of the sub functions in your stewardship committee ought to be doing the same thing. They ought to be talking with each other. The people working on planned giving in one parish ought to be talking to the people working on planned giving in another parish. And if every one of your parishes had all 10 of these functions filled by somebody or somebodies, then you could create sub networks of people working together. So imagine if all of the welcoming ministry people from all the parishes got together and participated in improving the welcoming ministries for all. And that's one of the benefits of having a metropolis structure where we can, on a regional basis, create excellence. Okay. All right. The sixth question we got is, okay, if when we're getting started, if we've done correctly, we'll launch, appropriately the stewardship program at the level of committee, parish council, parish ministry. How do we do it right from the start? Okay. Surprisingly, my Trinitarian nature, I gave you a three-part answer. This is a direct copy from a slide in the deck. This is an exact copy of that slide in the deck. And this is also reinforced by the checklist that Father Jim gave you before. All right, so first of all, create your annual schedule. This is an annual process. It's not a one-time September, October process. It is an annual process. So your team needs to come together, not in January, but in November, December, and say, what's our calendar going to look like? How are we going to roll this out? So that's one critical step. Second critical step, we need at least quarterly, notice the words at least are underlined, at least quarterly homilies on stewardship. And that can include clergy and testimonials. We can have a very, very effective testimonial from a parishioner who was engaged in a ministry that changed people's lives. And that's as effective a homily on stewardship as you will ever hear, okay? Don't be focused on the financial sides. This is not the time where you come up and berate them saying we're behind in our budget, because frankly, that's uninspiring. Emphasizing the engagement of their time and their talents and what a difference it makes. You can express how easy it is for them to sign up, not only giving online sign-up options, but online sign-up for ministries and things of that nature, so that those that want to work in the feeding ministry or those that want to work on the visitation of seniors ministry have an easy way to gather, right? We want to always be emphasizing at least quarterly percentage giving on our way to becoming tithers. And we always, 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 always want to focus on the incredible ministries that could be funded if only we were tithing parishes. Get them to envision something much bigger than what they have in front of them, and then they'll start to see it. That's what happens at least quarterly. Finally, we have monthly articles. And again, whatever way you communicate, whether you have a written publication, Father Jim gave you some examples of some snippets that you can put in your bulletins. I have a series of articles on my website that you're free to borrow, use, and plagiarize, revise, edit, do what you want to with them, but to provide you some content. It's not just scripture lessons, because they're helpful, but you have to apply it. And this is where testimonials make a difference in that regard. So we want to build this rhythm of a regular stewardship campaign with an annual schedule, quarterly messaging on all of these areas, monthly messaging, and then of course a campaign month in which we actually do the personal calls and the personal visitations. That's what the whole rhythm looks like. And then you hit the repeat button and you do it again the next year, but you tweak some things. If you look at one of the things that and again, if you've got your own resources, your own materials, your own graphic designers, no one's telling you not to use them. The Archdiocese is merely providing what the Archdiocese is providing because it's an available resource. But if you want to use your own art, that's beautiful, or your own iconography or your own theme. But this gives you a tool, a starting point. But you need to be changing it up and you need to be focusing, but the exact same steps are the same, okay? So hopefully that's the answer to number 7. Now, question number 6. Question number 7 was, they said, that financial thing that you mentioned, right? What's that all about? And so this is called a financial stewardship analysis. It's really an in-depth look that I do on your financial statements over a 2-year period of time. And you get back, it was created over the last 12 years using best practices in financial analytics, but it was adapted to the Orthodox Church ecosystem, and it's been used effectively by over 275 parishes. Just last night, I delivered one to one of your parishes. Tomorrow is a delivery to another parish. And last week was a delivery to another parish, and there's already 1 or 2 that are lined up. So there's some that are lining up. And I encourage you to talk to Gary Wallner and his parish, where Gary had to step out for his board meeting, parish council meeting. But Gary and his parish were the unfortunate victims last night. And so I encourage you to feel free to talk to them and find out what their perceptions are of the value of it. So you can talk to the folks at Resurrection in Castro Valley, and then tomorrow we're doing Bakersfield. But what it does is it's an in-depth analysis of your financial statements, and it really gets you focused on the most important things you need to focus on in your financial statements that will tell you what's going on from a stewardship perspective. And it then compares your parish to all of the other Orthodox parishes, as well as the Christian parishes. And I give you tools and templates that you can use to, from that day forward, measure what's really important. And it will teach you how to stop measuring things that are unimportant and insignificant. For example, and I say this in every time I deliver a financial stewardship analysis. So if you're from Bakersfield, you'll hear this tomorrow. If I ever hear, and I know this is a very mean-spirited thing to say, particularly with what y'all are going through in the state of California. If I ever hear of a parish that I have taken through a financial stewardship analysis report their average pledge, I will personally come and burn that church down. That church does not deserve to exist, because the average pledge is the most meaningless number in all Orthodox churches. It is an irrelevant number, and I will prove it over and over and over again. And the reason is because we have some big donors that always skew the average higher. In a typical Greek Orthodox Archdiocese parish, the median, the halfway point, the one that is relevant, is about between 40% and 60% of the average. And the reason why it's at 40 to 60% of the average rather than 100% of the average is, again, because big donors are skewing the averages. Average is a misleading number, but you'll learn that if you do a financial stewardship analysis. It'll also give you key performance metrics and key performance indicators that will let you know where you're standing relative to other Orthodox churches and other churches. But what we really try to do is focus on what are the 4 or 5 biggest insights that you really need to take away from your personal parish's situation. It's free. It takes a while because, as I said, there's a lot of research that goes back and forth. Those that have gone through it know that I come back to you with a lot of questions to make sure I understand your financial statements. 2 years of P&L, 2 years of your donor chart, but there's a link on my website, and I provided it for you here. You can go and download a document that explains it in detail and tells you what you need to provide. And then once you provide it to me and I ask you some questions, depending on where it comes in the cycle of the other things I've got going on, we will get you scheduled and we do a full-blown presentation to your entire parish council and leadership, and it will give you the greatest insights as to what's going on financially that you can imagine. Okay. Question number 8. What other aspects or services have we seen helpful to parishes? Now, this was an interesting question that came in because, interestingly enough, His Eminence and I spent, I don't know, what was it, Your Eminence, about an hour and a half talking about
an hour and a half.
An hour and a half, talking about this exact same thing last week. So it's very timely. I shared this with you very early on. After having done this, after having done presentations now at over 500 Orthodox parishes, having done the financial stewardship analysis for over 275 now, and having completed strategic plans that cover over 26% of Orthodox Christians in America, these are the 4 elements of an effective church. Every one of these 4 elements have to be optimized to excellence. We've spent the last 10 weeks just in the lower right-hand quadrant on creating a culture of stewardship. But there are 3 other things that are equally as important if you're trying to have the most effective church and the most effective church culture. When we talk about engaged disciples, there's really kind of 5 areas that I focus on. And there's a whole set of programs on this. We can talk later if you want. We can do a separate, maybe 2-part series on the 5 elements here that focus on increasing spiritual education, helping people discover their stewardship callings, prayer, Orthodox leadership development, and youth discipleship. There's more to talk about, but I'm just telling you, those are areas that if you will work on those areas, you will substantially improve the engaged discipleship in your parishes. And that's something that His Eminence and I are conspiring to kind of figure out a way to kind of help provide some resources. We talked about the culture of stewardship. You've heard now all 15 of these elements in the review today. I'm not going to cover that. The other thing that was actually inspired, your Metropolis was the leader in this, is in creating a consensus vision with a plan to achieve it. And it really involves a couple of things. I call it the 4 Ps of planning. You have to have the right people go through the right process to develop the right plan that is properly performed. And if it's done right, you will have reached a consensus on why does your parish exists, what are its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's what the SWOT acronym means. You will have captured the vision of where your parish is going. You'll understand the values that you use to make your decisions, and you'll develop the mission of why you exist and your wildly important goals. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's on that. I know Steve Tibbs has been doing a great job in your Metropolis, taking a lot of parishes through strategic planning. Steve and I talk all the time. I've been doing this a lot in other parishes also. So in addition to reaching out to Steve, and I provided you some information that's right off of your website where you can click in and reach out to them and get some information. I'm also providing you 3 other resources that if you're interested, they're video resources. So, and I've given you the links there. You can watch a 2-part program on how to do parish strategic planning. Then you can listen to a separate presentation on how to use the 4 disciplines of execution, which is the newest technique in doing planning within organizations. And then thirdly, you can get examples of
We lost you, Bill.
You're off.
Okay.
You're back again on.
Just right after you had that, the drink
Are we
of
there?
water.
Yes.
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. So you can actually download existing strategic plans and actually see what other parishes have come up with and do that. But the first 2 will provide you videos that you can watch or podcasts that you can listen to. That's how you can reach out to Steve Tibbs. And at the bottom, you can also reach out to me. The 4th of the dimensions, it was real funny. Your Eminence, I hope you'll be okay if I tell this story. So I said, well, Your Eminence, there's this 4th dimension on effective worship experience, but I know that's the big elephant in the church, and so we can't really talk about that and whatnot. And he said, why can't we talk about it? And I said, well, can we talk about it? He said, well, of course we could talk about it. So I shared with him some of what the data was saying and whatnot. And he says, oh yes, we can do this. We can work in this area. I promise you, we can figure this thing out, and we're going to figure this thing out. So I'm just as excited as I could possibly be that His Eminence said there is no aspect of what the data tells us are the 4 things we need to work on that we're not going to be able to conspire and create best-in-class solutions. So I'm just telling you, coming to a parish near you, but I'm telling you that this is something that's going to be worked on. This is going to be a lot of fun. I also want to make a plea in terms of this question of what else do we need to focus on, and that is leadership development. There is no parish that doesn't need leadership development. None, 0, zip, nada, never. By the way, there's no organization that doesn't need leadership development. And even if you already are a leader in your organization, you need some leadership development work. When I was managing managing partner of the office of my law firm. Now we had, 21 offices all over the globe, 1,100 lawyers. When I was managing partner of my office, even though I'd been in management and law firms for decades, even though I had gotten an MBA, I still went to a special intensive 5-day leadership development program and learned a lot of new techniques. And then I would read books and we would have group sessions on that. So I'm just telling you, you're never done learning as a church leader. And the best advice I can give you is advice I'd already given you once before from the greatest lawyer that ever lived. St. John Chrysostom, who was trained in the law, though was wise enough never to become a lawyer, when he reminded you that your job, your most important task as a leader of your church, is to discern the spiritual gifts of those under your authority and to cause them to be used to the full for the benefit of all. And then he got in your face by saying only a person who can discern the gifts of others and rejoice at the flowering of those gifts is fit to lead the church. And so I cannot tell you how important it is to have a constant effort and focus on leadership development. Now, I know Steve has some great leadership development materials. I know there's other materials that are in the Metropolis of San Francisco, and there's others out there. So, for example, I have a leadership development, an Orthodox servant leadership development program that I've developed independently over the years, and it focuses on what I found are the 6 elements of effective Orthodox servant leadership, which are courage, love, humility, trust, vision, and team. And the best leaders are excellent in all 6 of those dimensions. And we talk about each of those and we kind of focus on them. So regardless of which one you use, regardless of where you go, when in answering the question of what else can we do other than this stewardship program, I've told you, you've got to create engaged disciples of Jesus Christ. You have to have clarity about the vision of where your parish is going and how you're going to get there. We have to have a unifying, effective worship experience, and we need to make sure that we have trained our leaders at the highest level of training that we can possibly have done. Now, after the first round of questions, literally about 30 minutes before this session, or as what we affectionately refer to as Greek time, we got a bunch of these questions. So I'm going to try and trigger these off as quickly as I can. So for the person who asked the question number 8, I don't want you to feel like I'm being dismissive of you, okay? But I'm going to be dismissive of you because I'm going to lay the foundation. Remember, I told you that the data tells us, and it's absolutely empirically been validated, so you can't argue with me about this, folks. Orthodox Christians are in the top quartile of income earners in the United States. Annual income, we are in the top quartile of annual income. The data has also been absolutely confirmed that we are in the bottom quartile of giving to our churches. Top quartile of income, bottom quartile in giving to our churches. All right, so zito las. Okay, great. So here's my question to you. Why would you care about what the people in the bottom quartile are doing? It is irrelevant to you, because even if you're at the top of the entire GOA ecosystem, all that means is you're at the top of the bottom quartile. So you shouldn't care how many other parishes are doing this or doing that. It should be irrelevant to you because you're comparing yourself to the wrong standard. Now, the truth of the matter is I don't know, because I can't survey all 550 parishes. I know of some parishes that while they may still have a festival, they use $1 of it for operating purposes, 0 for operating purposes. I know quite a few parishes that don't even have a festival and fund all their church operations. But I can't give you an exact number. I can't give you an exact percentage. That survey hasn't been done. And frankly, it's a worthless survey, because even if you were one of those parishes, I'd say congratulations, you're at the top of the bottom quartile. So now you've moved from an F to a D. Big deal, right? I'm trying to inspire you to say the answer is, I don't care what the other ones are doing. Our church is free of this cancer. Our church is living within not only our means, but we're living within our potential in this thing. So there are plenty of churches that do it. There are plenty of churches that have festivals and then do other things with their money. There's plenty of churches that don't have festivals. But what I'm telling you is that shouldn't matter to you. What should matter to you is that whether you have a festival or not, God bless you, that's an independent decision. Do not rely on third-party, non-Orthodox income to keep your churches open. So I know that sounded harsh and whatnot, but I always laugh when, and by the way, all of you who are parents, know this argument, like when your kids came to you and said, well, Johnny's mom and dad let him do it. And, in my generation, the standard line was, well, if Johnny jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you jump off the Brooklyn Bridge? So, we compare ourselves, but unnecessarily so. What I will tell you is that 100% of the churches that are at the top tier of generosity and giving have no festivals. Let me say that again. 100% of the churches that are at the top tier of generosity and stewardship giving have no festivals. Vast majority of them are not Orthodox, but they have no festivals. So let's just be clear. All right. Question
Bill?
number, yes.
Bill, actually, questions number 9 to 13 were questions that were posed and answered in previous sessions. So, when I sent them over, just to capture a little bit of some of the historical questions, if, we wanted to revisit them at all. We do have a new question, though, in the chat session that Christina has put out. So if we can field that one, that's a new one.
All right. Can I ask for one favor?
Sure.
I'm going to pick one of these and do a little show and tell, Steve. Is that okay?
Absolutely, Bill.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we're going to take all the new questions. So I'm going to stop the share of the PowerPoint, and I'm going to hopefully start the share just to show you the answer to the question of how do we measure engagement, right? And I gave you the resource of the Gallup book. Now I want to be very, very clear. I don't sell anything. I am not in the business of selling anything. I'm in the business of giving it away. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't give this one away. This one is actually offered for a fee. The Gallup organization has a very sophisticated tool to measure church engagement in the parish that they sell. I don't sell it. I don't get a commission. I know of people that have used this tool and have found it incredibly valuable. I am stealing one of the answer sheets that one of the parishes got just to show you some of the questions that are in their survey that Gallup has determined are the most effective questions to measure engagement. So as a member, I know what's expected to me. My parish meets my spiritual needs. I regularly have the opportunity to do what I do best. In the last month, I've received recognition or praise from someone in my parish. The spiritual leaders in my parish seem to care about me as a person. There's someone in my parish who encourages my spiritual development. As a member of my parish, my opinions seem to count. I'm not going to read all of them because they go on and on and on, okay? Now, there's 25 very specific questions, and everyone in the parish is surveyed on each of these questions, and then it's rated on a Likert scale of 1 to 5, right? And then it's tabulated and it's sorted, and the analytics are provided to you. I merely shared that as an example of the sophistication of tools that are out there that can actually measure engagement. Now, Gallup has found this to be highly correlated with excellence in generosity and engagement in church. Okay, so I'm not making that judgment myself. There are other tools out there. I'm not selling or directing you towards one or the other. But what I am telling you is the only reason I wanted to digress on that, Steve, is to say, hey, folks, it isn't just a guess. There's a way you can measure everything. And engagement with you and their parish is a measurable, quantifiable item. And by the way, if you want to see what those elements are, just Google Gallup Parish Engagement Survey. Now, the first couple of links you'll get are to Gallup that's going to sell you their survey product. And I'm not here to encourage that or discourage that. I know parishes that have used it and have found it very valuable. But eventually you'll find one of the parishes, like the one I just showed you that just happened to be a Roman Catholic parish, that actually went through it and put on their website the results. And so we can now decrypt and reverse engineer. Now, you can't use it. You can't steal it. That's Gallup intellectual property. But it gives you an idea that this is empirically measurable and something that you can be thinking about. Okay, I'm sorry, Steve. I just wanted to do a little show and tell because there is empiricism behind everything we do. All right, what's the next question?
Yeah, that's great. And Bill, actually on that survey, what's the rough order of magnitude as far as cost?
That's a good
Hundreds,
question.
Thousands?
I don't, it's been a long time, Steve. Great question. I should know the answer to this. I don't know the answer to this. I do know it's scaled based on the, as you would expect,
Size.
on the size. And it's also scaled based on which of the services of Gallup that you use, right? So if you just want to get the survey and run it yourself and do it, it's one thing. If you want them to do the analysis for you, it's another thing. And then if you want them to help customize solutions to address what they find in there, they're consultants, right? So they're selling everything by the unit, if you will. So it is affordable, but it's not cheap. It is affordable, but it's not cheap, but it's scalable. And by the way, just one more thing on that. Although they will tell you, and maybe they won't let you do it anymore, but they used to let you do it. They will tell you they want everybody surveyed, but in reality, you don't get all responses. So if you wanted to pick a representative cross section and narrow how many people you survey, that would reduce your costs. So that's one way to look at it. Okay. Now you got to, one of the things we always fight in this area, whether it's ONCD or any of the other ideas that are out there, is I have a real bias towards not doing small sized surveys, because I think the reliability of the data becomes a lot less the smaller the size. And I think we really need to get a much larger N than normal. But anyway, what's the next one, Chief?
Okay. Question from Christina that was in the chat session, and we'll also ask if others have questions, please either post it in the chat or you can unmute. The Christina asks, if we don't have a strategic plan and we haven't used stewardship ambassadors previously, how long does it take to get stewardship ambassadors on board? Is there time prior to the 2021 campaign?
You mean yeah, okay.
I think even the committee, I think also, is it maybe, Christina, is it really being able to form a functioning stewardship committee as you've described, with maybe not all 10 roles, but at least, enough roles to take advantage of it here in the 2021 campaign?
Yeah, this is a great question. And so let me give you a very precise and narrow answer, Steve, picking up on where you went on 2021, and then I'll give you the broader answer. But I want to be very specific in the narrow answer. I think this is the right time. And I said this, when we were first talking with His Eminence and Kristen and Steve about doing this, I really thought this was the right time, and we're ending at the right time in the cycle, because we've given you a lot of content, we give you a lot of information, we've given you a lot of food for thought. Some things you can actually start to roll into the 2021 campaign, and I'm gonna just call it the 21 campaign to avoid confusion with 2020, right? But the 21 campaign, you can start to roll it into it. But what you really need to be shooting for is being fully operational for the 22 campaign. The campaign month is going to be in September, October of 21, right? So 21 is going to be where you're going to work out some of the kinks and work out some of the nuances. And this actually fits to the very narrow question that was asked. I think between now and October, this time next year, right, you can do the work necessary to create a mini or full strategic plan for your parish. I think you can do the work necessary to create a mini or full strategic plan for your parish, so that in September of 21, when you recruit your 10% of your community that are ambassadors, which includes everybody already on your stewardship committee, plus your parish council, plus your ministry leaders, plus whatever additional people we need to add, the training program you're going to do, if you remember back to that pyramid, the first thing we talk about is, here's our alignment of the vision of the leadership. Here's what our vision of the parish is. Here's what our council of ministries looks like. Here's what our handbook of ministries looks like. All that foundational work can be done between now and September of 21, so that in September of 21, when we recruit that 10% team, right, and we walk them through what we want to accomplish, we have all the tools that we can hand them with. Here's the vision of the parish. Here's our council of ministries. Here's what our handbook looks like. Here's our revised stewardship materials. Now we're hitting the ground running. In the meantime, you start recruiting those 10 positions, as many of them as you can. Take the materials that you have and improve them based on what we talked about. In other words, get rid of all those stupid thermometers and get rid of all of those expense budget things, and just kind of focus in terms of in terms of, what we're really trying to accomplish there, on what we want to, what the key focal point is here, and then really refine the materials, and then do the personal calls this year. You can do personal calls this year, because it's COVID time. But I'm really asking you to kind of lay the foundation and start to get things right. Like, you can this year create your year-long campaign for next year. And I think that you can do. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it
Yes,
did.
I believe so.
Is there a follow-up?
Christina?
I guess the only thing that I would want to know is, I mean, what kind of training do we give to the ambassadors, or do we just wing it with our stewardship committee and parish council this year?
Well, this year, I mean, obviously, if you can recruit people, then that's great. I mean, you can do that. But if there is a specific slide, and I can direct you to it in the materials, that talks about what you want that dialogue to look like. Give me 1 second, and I can probably I'll be talking while I take you to it. There is, why do I have 2 instances of this open? Let's see which one of these it is. Okay, I think it's that one. So I've got to shift. Oops, sorry, folks. I'm trying to do multiple things here at once. The training follows the script. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to pull up here is an example. It's not the only way to do it, but it is an example of what an effective script can look like, of kind of what you're trying to accomplish in the dialogue, that you're going to have with the people when you do the home visitations, right? And so here we go. I found it. Let me share the screen. So you'll see it's not really a heavy lift in the training. So you're going to walk them through, look, here's the things we want you to do. We just need you to do these things, right? And so, obviously the first part's easy, prayer, Thanksgiving, getting them to talk about what they like about the parish, easy. So where the real work comes in is right here. It's these 3 steps in the middle, sharing them the vision of the parish and the ministries of the parish. If you don't have a vision, that's where you're a little bit behind the 8 ball, but you can at least share with them the ministries. Ask them what their questions and comments are, and then you pull out the ministry handbook that you will hopefully create, and I've given examples, and actually show them what that looks like, so that you can connect the dots between the ministries they want to work on and the ministries that the church has available to it, right? So what you're doing, all you're doing in this training is saying, folks, that's why this is really a 15-minute dialogue, depending on how loquacious the people are. Maybe it's a 20 or 30-minute dialogue. It's not a very heavy lift, and most of it is just talking to them and just getting to know them and whatnot. But as we talked about here, when we asked them what the top 3 things are they like about the parish, it's because that's leading us then to show them when we go to, and again, this, you may remember this slide, these are some of the examples of ministry handbooks, one of them which is from your Metropolis, and they're all available to be downloaded on my website. You can then take them directly to the page that talks about the ministries they're already interested in, right? So back to the training function, it's really not that much of a heavy lift in terms of doing that. And we can have a separate, if a bunch of you wanted to, we can get together, and I'm happy to help do a Zoom training for y'all. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Great. Bill, we've got another question, actually a question from Ty, but I think shared with many others. Obviously, all of us here are committed and passionate, but there's many other sort of stakeholders and others we have to work with. So Ty asked, how do we quiet naysayers who won't review these materials but want to dominate the conversation because they know better? And I think we had, as a sort of follow-up comment, I'm with Ty. We need help with the loud, boisterous naysayers who feel they have the ear of the parish, but in fact are very out of touch. Great question and comments, just because the time of change and bringing about change is so important right now. So Bill?
Well, I'll tell you what I do. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it the only way to do it, but I found that this is an effective way to do it. If the person is a naysayer because they have intellectual honesty and intellectual curiosity, they just don't have enough information, then sharing information with them can get them off of it. If they are intellectually dishonest and or just know-it-alls, you know, what Spiro Agnew called the nattering nabobs of negativism, they just like to hear themselves talk and they think they know it all, then what I have found is that if you give them enough rope, they will hang themselves. And the way I try to do it as lovingly as you can, and I'm not really good at the loving part, so you should get advice from somebody else on how to do it more lovingly. Because this happens to be Ty at almost every live program I do. Somebody will stand up and say, oh, well, that's not it, or that doesn't work, or that's not the case. And I'll say, great, that's wonderful. What do you think the answer is? And they will, trust me, as you know, they'll be the first ones to tell you what they think the answer is, right? And I'll say, great. How would you prove that to me? What's your data that shows that that's the answer? And this is where you'll find out whether they are intellectually honest and curious and just don't have enough data, or they're just, you know, they're just obstinate people that like to hear themselves talk. Because what they'll say is, well, that's what I think. I said, well, that's great. I mean, I'm sure your opinion is valid to you, and I'm sure it's formed by whatever experiences you've had. But other than an N of one, an experience of one, do you have any other data that supports what you're saying? And then the answer is usually for those people, no. And then I pull out my data and I'd say, okay, well, here was this piece of research. Here was this piece of data. Here was this piece of survey. Here was this piece of this. Here was this piece of that. Here's this, you know. So how do you reconcile that? In other words, I don't tell them they're wrong, you know, because, you know, the old Socrates quote was right. You cannot teach adults new things. You can merely create the environment in which they discover the truth in themselves. Now, a better way to do that I have found is I'm almost done. The better way to do that, I'm sorry, I got to run off to do something else here because it's almost midnight here. The better way to do that is to engage them in a didactic exercise. So, you know, I had a guy that was talking about how something would not work. And I said, okay, let's role play this. You be that person and I'll be me. Okay. And I just, would you do this? Well, yeah. Would you do that? Yeah. Would you do that? Yeah. Would you do that? And after about 6 questions, he proved just by him playing his obstinate self that it could work. And so, you know, for some people, it's about that realization that they've been wrong, and it's hard to admit. It's hard to acknowledge. It's hard to accept. But it's there. And so you got to be patient and loving with them. And then there'll be some times where they're in that 16% in the law of diffusion of innovation of laggards. And I have a Holy Spirit list. And I got a group of people that I put on the Holy Spirit list because I tried everything I'm capable of. So it's up to the Holy Spirit now. And you're not going to get 100% of the people. You'll never get 100% of the people. So don't even try. You got to go for the 84% that will embrace the message and will embrace the thing you have to do. And then you have to at least try to neutralize them until they can come on board. And I'll be honest with you, they don't always come on board, but I've had plenty of them years later sometimes come back and say, I get it now. Or you weren't exactly right, but you were close. Okay, fine. That's a win. I'll take it, you know. But usually it's about asking them questions and asking them what their data is and what their proof is, and then presenting them valid data on the other side. Or, as you like to do, take them out for a beer.
Before we close, are there any other questions? Bill, I know before closing comments that you have, and then certainly His Eminence, as
Dude, I'm
always,
on a Zoom call. Just checking in. You're okay?
All right, everyone's good. Everyone's okay. So that's the important part. Bill, of course, to thank you, and I look forward to working, you know, with you and continuing, I think, what we started here. One of my many takeaways from all these sessions, but you know, you said early on, re-evangelizing our parishioners, and that really struck a chord with me because as stewardship chairs, as parish, as lay leaders at our parishes, it's always been a tough job, but we know now that what we're going through, all of us, makes it so incredibly important. And I think you were spot on. And I'll personalize it and think about it as, how do we re-evangelize our own parishioners? Some parishes have done a very wonderful job getting through this crisis. Others, we may really need to engage them. So in the true sense of Christian stewardship, we need to be very active and reach out and bring our parishioners back to the physical church when we have the opportunity to do that, God willing, in 2021. So Bill, thank you for always inspiring words and some great ideas and data and things to do and execute. So I very much appreciate it. Bill, closing comments before His Eminence?
Well, my only closing comments are just to thank you all. First, to thank His Eminence for giving me the privilege of serving him and his parishes. Steve, for all the work that you and Kristen, who's just thanklessly and tirelessly working behind the scenes to make all of this happen, and the rest of the team. Father Jim, for being an active and engaged part of this and keeping the ministry going at the archdiocesan level. But most importantly, to each and every one of you, because if you have given me any opportunity to do anything to serve you, then you've allowed me to fulfill that which the Lord has called me to do. And so it's I who owe you a debt of gratitude in allowing me to do that which the Lord has called me to do. Because if He didn't allow me that opportunity, then I wouldn't be doing it and I wouldn't be fulfilling it. So I thank you for everything you have done. But one day you will stand before the awesome judgment seat of Christ. When today is just the story that you tell, what's the story that you will tell? Thank you.
Bill, thank you again. A huge debt of gratitude on behalf of the Metropolis and all of these wonderful people who have been with us for the last so many days and so many dates, 10 weeks almost. To say that this has been inspirational is an understatement. And I know that we cannot applaud you, but we can really pray a great deal for your well-being. Yes, that's exactly what. Just put your hands together and give a little applause to our friend, because there is a need for us to thank. You taught us how to be generous and to be also thankful. And that is something that we need to give back to you, to tell you how much we appreciate you. And we literally, you have inspired us in more than one way. Well, this evening, it's not the end, as we said. It's actually just scratching the surface a little bit. And between you and me, my brother Bill, the Philoptochos has done a little bit more than just nickel and dime people. He has given, they have given wings to what you preach all the time, because they have gone beyond that. They are ministers, and I want to thank them, especially in our metropolis. They have been inspirational like you have. We want to continue. We want to continue offering all these opportunities for all of you, my beloved brothers and sisters, and to the parishes that you have here. Please email Steve Papas or Christian Bruskas, share your ideas, and let us come back to you with other ways that we can impart knowledge, the skills, the tangible resources that Mr. Marianis has asked us to challenge us to make them reality. A shared vision for a stewardship ministry that can really make your parishes thrive through expanded ministries while serving others, so that you may be able to provide a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ. Mr. Marianis has invited us and challenged us. And I know that going forward, we're going to have a great deal more narratives to write, to make our church what it's supposed to be, a place of healing, a place of giving, a place of love and unity for everyone. So I thank you again for your enthusiastic participation, all of you. I see some wonderful people from Alaska. I want to send a shout out to Margaret, and from all over the place. And this is it's inspiring me. And Mr. Marianis, you need to know that that is the blessing that you have from God. And as we say in this divine liturgy, thine own of thine own we offer unto you on behalf of all and for all. Finally, I want to thank my brother and co-celebrate Father James Cordalis for staying up all that late. I know he got a permission from Presbytera to do so. He has been a wonderful and faithful servant of our church, and very much I appreciate his input in these past 10 weeks. So, my beloved brothers and sisters in the Lord, this is where the journey starts, not ends. We begin. And I want to thank you and ask God to bless you and keep you and your families safe and healthy. Take the message that Mr. Marianis gave us for the last 10 weeks and make it work in your parishes. Become the agents of change in our parishes. Plenty of the fields are ready for harvesting. We are those who are going to do the harvesting. And I pray to God that we're going to do it with a loving and inspirational from God, and He will give us the guides to do so. Mr. Marianis, again, thank you so much. And Steve, thank you for your very decisive way of making this a successful series. Looking forward for the rest, what we're going to have down the road. And of course, Kristen, thank you very much for your work. Let us pray so that we can depart in peace. O Christ our God, who are at all times and in every hour in heaven and on earth, you are worshipped and glorified, who are long-suffering, merciful, and compassionate, who loves the just and shows mercy upon the sinner, who calls all to salvation through the promise of blessings to come. Lord, at this hour receive our supplications and direct our lives according to your commandments. Sanctify our souls, hallow our bodies, correct our thoughts, cleanse our minds, deliver us from all tribulation, evil, and distress. Encompass us with your holy angels, that guided and guarded by them, we may attain to the unity of the faith and to the knowledge of your unapproachable glory. For you are blessed unto the ages of ages. Amen. Good night. Stay safe. My gratitude to all of you. My thanks to God for all of you. Please be always kind and healthy. Thank you so much. Brother Bill, very, very, very soon to talk to each other again. I'm sure about it.
I look forward to it.
God bless you all. Thank you, Steve. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
James, bye-bye.